Welcome to the Rebel Rise podcast, a place where badass women like you come to connect, learn, and grow. Here, we celebrate the relentless spirit of women who dare to dream and design their own destinies. This is your time for no bullshit, so no subject is off limits. This is a time for you to collect inspiration and create the vision for your life. Get ready to break free from societal expectations, take your power back, and step into your dream life. Your empowerment journey begins right here. Let's go. In this episode of the Rebel Rise podcast, we have the one and only Anastassia Lover. Now, if you're not familiar with Anastassia, you are in for a treat. She is a business shaman, evolutionary astrologer, and a spiritual sales coach. She helps business leaders to align their soul evolution with their business evolution so that they can achieve transcendental success. Now, I cannot wait for you to check out this episode, so let's get into it. All right. So welcome, Anastassia. I'm so excited to have you here. And I am so excited to get to talk to you about spiritual practices and how busy women can fit it into their lifestyles, because it is something that I struggled with for a long time. I'm sure you did as well. And you're probably going to talk about it here in just a moment. But I really feel like you're mastering this. So can you just, first of all, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then, let's just get into it.
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa. I'm so excited to be here. And this is absolutely something that I have been trying to figure out, right? Because that's one of the things that
Yeah.
we successful women do is we always try to figure things out. And, spiritual practice is not always something that we figure out, but, we'll talk more about that. So I'm Anastassia. I would call myself a spiritual business coach. I'm a business shaman.
I love
And
that.
yeah, I mean, I really believe that our business and the work that we do, especially as ambitious women, is really kind of like what Tony Robbins says, right? Business is a spiritual practice, and it's a way that we get to serve. It's a way that we get to fulfill our spiritual purpose in this world. And I think it's something that we don't talk about enough is the spiritual side of business, which I see right now that is the trend. So I'm so happy that we're kind of getting into that age where we can talk about this more openly and not look at business as something that's just making money or something unethical like it's been done in the past. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I totally agree. And I think for any business owners listening, it comes from a really masculine place typically. And I think that's why so many people, when they're launching their businesses for the first time, really struggle. And I know that's something that just kind of gave me the ick. I think that's what people are saying now. It's called like the ick, um, with selling, right? Because we have these really negative experiences with traditional sales, which is just very forceful, very hyper masculine. And I know there's a masculine energetic component to the spiritual part of sales as well. But I think when you consider adding that feminine flow to it, right? And considering how do I just kind of offer it to somebody, like just hand it to them and say, hey, does this work for you? Does this not work for you? Right. And so I'm curious to know though, what is from a spiritual standpoint, how do you balance the feminine and the masculine in that regard?
yeah, that's a great question. So I've come from sales as my background. I've been in sales for well over 2 decades now. And going into sales, and this was in like the early mid 2000s, it was still very masculine. So a lot of my managers, because I've done financial sales, I've done mortgage sales, corporate, just all kinds. And every single teacher, trainer, manager that I've had has always been um, it has been very aggressive, right? It's been very pressured. Don't let them get off the phone and use all kinds of rebuttals. And that was kind of my introduction into sales and into business. And I'm very adjustable. So I did try that on and I stepped into that role and I was very successful. But ultimately, it didn't feel right. And I think that it started to affect me personally. It started to affect my family life. My spiritual life, absolutely. And it took me a really long time to unlearn that. So I'm a big believer that we learn all the hard things when we're young, and then we spend the rest of our lives unlearning them. So it took me a while to unlearn it. And it really wasn't until I got into the coaching space and started to see all of these other coaches and entrepreneurs that were, um, that were approaching more of that, embodying more of that feminine energy. There was one specific time that I remember I was talking to this coach, and I feel so bad. I forgot who the coach is. It was on Clubhouse. I don't know if you've ever been on Clubhouse, the social media
Yeah.
platform. So one of the speakers, and we were having a conversation about sales. And of course, I come in like the sales expert with this aggressive energy, and people could feel it. And and she said something that really stood out to me. She said, when you look at, you know, a bow and arrow, and I'm not too technical with the terms of the bow and arrow, but when you pull back the arrow, right? Yes, the aim and the forward movement happens in the right in the arrow shooting through the air, but when you pull it back, first you have to pull it back, right? And there's a wisdom to it, and there's an intention to it, and it's that release that ultimately allows that arrow to hit the bullseye. And that's kind of a perfect example of the masculine and the feminine. And so that really stood out to me, and I'm like, I will
Yeah.
be the pullback. I will be the release, right? I will be that wisdom moving forward. And that served me so much in my business.
That's awesome. I really like that analogy. I've never thought about something like that before. So I've always looked at it from like at least my view with spirituality is like the sun and the moon energy, right? Like control and flow and day and night. And so I've always looked at it like that. So that's a really, really interesting way to look at it. And so I'm curious, because you are someone who is so busy, right? Like you have so many things happening for you. You're also a single mom, like doing the damn thing out there in the world and making it happen. You literally always have this glow to you. You look so organized. And obviously, like you and I are friends outside of our professions as well. So I know just like how many things that you're working on. So, if for all of the women who are listening, what are some things that you would tell them? We can start with sales, just like some sales advice for them, but also like how do they even begin to create this beautiful balance? Because that is really at our core how we need to move through life to feel like we can function and to feel present and to feel alive. So, how do you, I guess, balance those two things?
Yeah. And this is something that I've really had to learn over time. And it wasn't really until recently where I've been having a lot of chaos in my life. And I think chaos serves such an important purpose, right? Because it allows us to take a look at life in a different perspective and release some of the control that we have. So one of the things that I used to do, I guess, I don't want to say the wrong way, but I see people do this a lot, is we define spirituality in the form of spiritual practices. Like if I'm going to be a spiritual person, I need to have all these spiritual practices, right? I need to do my yoga, I need to do my meditation, my journaling, my gratitude. And tell me if this resonates with you, because we end up holding ourselves to such a high expectation of doing all those things that it becomes stressful. So now this spiritual practice is no longer spiritual because we're like, oh my gosh, I didn't do my meditation and okay, my
Yeah.
gratitude. And now you're thinking about the next thing, and it's no longer becomes quote unquote spiritual. Realizing that we already are spiritual beings. It doesn't matter if you do a spiritual practice or not, whatever you believe in, right? We are here in our bodies having a physical experience, but we are spiritual beings. So I think the first step is really to recognize that. And rather than holding yourself so strict to all these practices, understanding that life itself is a spiritual journey. And if you
Mm,
could look at it that way, right, you could be washing the dishes and having a spiritual experience. You could be hanging out with your kids. You could be working. You could be speaking on stage or serving. If you start to look at life as a spiritual experience, and it's really just a process of learning, right? Like when we think about what is our purpose, that was a huge aha moment for me, because I always thought that my purpose is to help people. My purpose is to get out there and change the world, is to make impact. But what if our purpose, the most important purpose, we can have many purposes, but the most important one is for us to learn, for us to just go through this journey of life and to learn as many lessons as we can and to heal our wounds and to just enjoy the journey, right? It's kind of like when you go to the movies and the movie's happening regardless. There's nothing you can do to make the movie stop, but you're just sitting there and enjoying it, right? And you're
Yeah.
laughing and crying and you're screaming, telling the characters what to do, but they're never going to hear you anyways, right? The movie
Yeah.
keeps going. So if we can look at life like that, I think that is the key because
Yeah.
we can start to embody the spiritual practice into every moment of our lives and we stop taking things so seriously, right? It's
Yeah.
almost like who cares? Who cares if you don't get that sale? Who cares if you don't hit that goal? Life is going to keep going. Life is going to give you more lessons and your only job is just to enjoy this process and let go of control, let go of expectations. And the more that we let go, it seems counterintuitive because when we think letting go means like we're giving up, right? We're just happy where we are. We never set another goal. But that's not true because when you are able to let go of control, you allow life to bring in surprises and unexpected things. And that's how manifesting works, right? You finally let go of that thing that you've been holding on to for so long, and all of a sudden that appears in your life.
Yeah.
And and it's just so beautiful. So that has really been the key for me. And it's not like I just woke up one day and I changed, right? This is a
Yeah.
continuous reminder because it's so easy for us to fall back into the old tendency of controlling and habits and, oh my gosh, I got to do all these things. And, we stop enjoying life in the process. So constantly reminding ourselves that to get back to that space.
Yeah, no, I love that. And everything you just said resonates with me so much. And I think we've talked a little bit about my background in sales before, which is very minimal and it really just like this sad, it was a very sad experience. It's like my origin, it's like the beginning of my origin story as a coach. But I did road shows. And so I would have to just walk up to somebody with a random object and hand it to them in like a Costco or a Sam's Club or a Fry's grocery store, Vaughn's, wherever you're at in the world, Kroger, basically, and just hand them something and try to sell it to them. And I think looking back, if I had had a more spiritual flow to my sales, it probably would have been so easy because that's something you truly have to detach from because it's such a cold sale. Like trying to sell a straightening iron to a bald man is like, and I did it once. I don't know how I did it, but I did. He happened to have a daughter, and I was like, yes. But I would get so caught up because you take that no to the face so many times. I would be crying in the field. I would be calling people like trying to network and get help and they were just like, "Well, I don't know what to tell you." Like I remember a mentor of mine was literally like those were her words. "I don't know what to tell you, dude," was what she said. And I was just like so offended at the time, but it just never really connected, right? And so I didn't make sales and I almost got my car repossessed. I was so bad at sales. Like this was forever ago. This was in 2014, I think. So this was a long, long, long time ago. So looking back on it, that makes sense. And also what you said about the spiritual practices starting to feel like they're a chore because I think as driven women who have really, really big goals and we want to be career women and we want to take care of ourselves and have that independence, you think, okay, I've got to get up in the morning. I've got to meditate first thing. I have to stretch. I have to do this and I have to do it every single day. And for me, a lot of my background is in restaurants. So I don't have a lot of like, I don't know what consistency is, which is crazy as a coach. Like, I'm always looking for ways to be a little more consistent, but my consistency is inconsistency, if that makes sense. And I've had to learn to make that work for me. So as long as I'm doing something for myself that makes me feel in flow for the day in the morning, then that's what I do. Sometimes it's a 5-minute candle flame focused meditation. Sometimes I want to close my eyes, or sometimes I do want to do some stretching in my room. Sometimes I just want to sit on my patio and stare at my tree and have a coffee. And that is exactly what I need. And I'm sure you have, but have you read The Untethered Soul before by Michael Singer?
Yes, I've listened to the audiobook.
Okay. Okay. So I've done both and it's a really powerful book. So anyone listening, if you have not read this book, do it. It's a pretty short read. It is mind blowing, but that's basically what he talks about is just he talks about the roommate in your head, right? Like this person that's always talking and always telling you what you should do. And he encourages you to externalize them or disassociate and think about them as a different person. And if that was a different person, would you actually want to hang out with that person? And I'm pretty sure the answer for everybody is going to be no, because I know for me, it's definitely no. It's like, shut up. Like, I don't want to hear you're complaining constantly. But he also talks about just being in the moment, right? Which is what you said about even the dishes can be a spiritual experience. It's like noticing the leaves on the trees and how they move instead of having to narrate that in our head, because we do without even noticing it. It's like, oh, the trees are green and there's oranges there that I need to pick. And the bark is this way. And you start to like describe things to yourself when it's not necessary. Same with the dishes. Like, oh, here's a really dirty plate. Here's a fork that I need to soak because somebody left it in the sink for too long. Right. And so I totally agree. If you can just find a way to make it a spiritual experience, to become the observer instead of having to internalize everything. And that goes back to sales too. I think there's a lot of power in that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just all it does or all it requires is just a shift of perspective because there's always different perspectives, right? We live in the 3D world and there's always different perspectives. So you could take a look at washing those dishes as a chore or, oh my gosh, I'm running late. Now I'm having to do this. Or you can look at it as a way that you get to, I don't know, meditate, like you said, right? Looking at the looking at the water while
Yeah.
you're washing the dishes, or looking at it as a way that you get to serve your family. So it's all different perspectives. And it kind of brings me back to what you were saying with your job, which is a very interesting job. I can't imagine selling training to a
Yeah,
bald
it's
man.
tough.
But if you're looking, if you're so focused on that one perspective of, I got to get the sale, I got to get the sale, everyone's saying no, that becomes very stressful, right? You're holding on to that grip. And when you don't get it, you feel like a failure. But what if you change perspectives and looked at it as, oh my gosh, I'm learning how to like build relationships. I'm learning how to talk to people. I'm learning how to have confidence to just walk up to people and start a conversation, which is something that most people don't have. And these life lessons are then going to stay with you for the rest of your life. So tiny shift of perspective changes the entire experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And so for somebody who is looking to boost their independence or their confidence, like you just said, what would you recommend to them as like the first two or three steps that they can take on their spiritual journey to start to build that up?
Yeah. Understand that there's a whole world inside of you. And I think the first step is really just getting curious about yourself because we're so used to getting curious about other people, getting curious about life experiences, right? We're looking outward. So the moment that you can start to look inward and start to get curious about yourself, and tell me if this is true, if you've experienced this, there's no bottom of the ocean when you start doing inner work, right? There's
Yeah.
always
Nope.
you can always go deeper. You can always go deeper. And when you start to get curious about yourself and you start focusing, getting more curious about, your own feelings and your own emotions, which I think becoming an observer really helps you do that because rather than just being reactive, you can start to look at, oh, why am I reacting like this? What's causing me? Out of all the different reactions that I can have right now, why am I choosing this? Right. So that's kind of the first step. And when you start to get curious and you go deeper and deeper and deeper, there's so much. I mean, I say that there's a whole universe inside of you. And I believe that that's a really, really, if you are going to embody a spiritual practice, that should be absolutely number one. Right. So, but whatever that looks like for you, whatever that looks like for you, because for some people, it could be journaling, right? For some people, it could be meditation or just sitting in silence. But rather than just looking at that as, oh, I have to journal or I have to meditate, understand the reason why. Oh, it's because I want to do some more deep discovery right now. I want to sit with myself and just connect better, right? Build a relationship with myself, learn more about myself. And that's made a huge difference for me personally. What about you? What are your thoughts on that, Vanessa?
I love it. And I really think that creating a sense of balance and really taking that pressure off of yourself, because it's really about what does it look like to you? Because as I'm listening to your answer, I'm thinking in my head, because this used to be me, where I would listen to people talking about spiritual practices, sitting in silence for 5 minutes or meditating just 20 minutes a day. And I'm like, oh my God, like, how am I going to make that happen? Like, I feel like I need to make it happen. And then I'm putting my pressure on myself. And then I'm mad when I'm trying to meditate and my dogs decide to go and bark, or I hear the water cooler turn on and it starts to rattle. When really, and this is a realization, and I've been trying to meditate for like years and I've never been able to get beyond 10 minutes. And you know what? That's okay. That's okay. It's still 10 minutes that I'm spending with myself. And the more I spend with myself, and I think this is why I haven't been able to get further than this. And I know I'm digressing a little bit, but I had to learn to let go, like you were saying, instead of thinking that I have to drop in so deeply that I don't notice anything around me and that I'm essentially astro projected into another realm, which has happened. But that's not the point of meditation. The point of meditation is to just sit there and to be and to allow. And so I feel like that's why it's taken me so long, because my brain is always go, 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 go. What's the next thing? What's the next goal? Where do I need to be next? Who do I need to come through for next? Right. That I was actually focused on the frustration of what was happening instead of the celebration of what's happening, and just allowing, like, oh, that's the sound, and I don't even have to say that, right? But just for the sake of you know, letting what goes on in my head. Like if I hear something turn on, I don't need to tell myself, oh, here's the annoying water cooler again. I can just say, that's it. That's it. You let it come in and you let it flow back out. And it took me so long to figure that out. And I have so much humility in saying that. I'm not even ashamed to say that it did probably take me like 3 years to actually have that realization that it's not about totally disconnecting from your environment, but it's about learning to actually connect more to your environment and just allow it to be. And so I think the thing that I would add, or what my thoughts are on this, is really challenging women as you get started with this. If you're trying to figure out a way to add a spiritual practice and to have more balance, is just simply observe. Like I have a friend, she's actually going to be a guest on this show. She has her own meditation podcast, and she had a driving meditation that she did for women to be able to do while they're driving. And it's not about disconnecting, because if you disconnected from driving, you would be in big trouble. But it's about feeling your foot on the gas pedal and feeling the presence of your hands on the steering wheel. And so that's really what it's about. So if you are really slammed busy and you are one of those women who is just thinking like, holy shit, how am I going to think about this? How am I going to make the dishes meditative when my kids are screaming in the background, or I'm listening to I'm in a Zoom meeting or something like that? It's really just about being present and being in the moment. And even in a meeting, you can do it. You can just connect with the people in the room and feel their feelings and their focus and maybe even their nervousness, like whatever you pick up on. It's not about internalizing it, but just about being in the moment and noticing.
Yes. Yes, yes. And what you just said about because I think about this a lot, right? I have two kids and sometimes they're like getting on my nerves, and I always take myself back, or take myself to the future time when I'm going to look back at this time, like I'm on my deathbed, right? And I'm thinking
Yeah.
back, like, how much I would give just to have that moment of like hearing my kids screaming, right, while I'm washing the dishes. And I think that is like so like beautiful, and just it puts a perspective on it. And something that I've always not just used in my personal life, but actually in sales too, is utilization. So I studied hypnosis, I studied NLP. I know you have too. And utilization is when we're able to use what's happening as the very reason, right? As the entire experience of what we're going through. So it came from Dr. Milton Erickson, who was a very, very famous hypnotherapist. And so people would come to him for a hypnosis session. And while he was in this hypnosis session, let's say they're deep in trance, and all of a sudden somebody comes in and slams the door. So most people would be like, oh no, let's start over, right? That was an interruption. What he would do is he would use that door slamming as a way to get people deeper into trance. So he would say, and now, he would say something like, and now you hear the doors of all your old limiting beliefs slamming as you're walking to the other side, right? So he would use something like that. And so whatever was happening, he was using it as the very reason. And it's something that I've used in sales. So whatever objection people give me, I always think of how can I use that objection as the very reason why they need to invest, why they need to sign up, right? The fact that they don't have enough time is the very reason why they need to get coaching, because it's going to help them save time from trying to figure it out on their own, right? So I think very, very powerful way to be able to use whatever experience you're in as a way of a spiritual practice.
Yeah. Yeah. The Milton model of NLP, like the hypnotic patterns, is pretty crazy. When I was going through that training, actually, I was feeling really tired reading all these hypnotic patterns. And they called it out and they addressed it. They're like, hey, if you're feeling tired while you're reading these, it's because it's hypnotic. Like it's literally like the whole reason. So if you haven't read anything by Milton Erickson, it's some pretty crazy stuff. And I'm actually curious, as you're talking about that, using the spirituality in sales and using their objection as the very reason why they must say yes. Do you attribute that skill that you have to be able to do that to the spiritual piece because you're present? So you're able to really dig into what that pain point is, regardless of what it is you're selling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is something that I've found both in coaching and sales, because sales is really coaching, right? You're
Yeah.
coaching somebody into a decision, you're coaching them into the confidence to say yes. Is the more that I'm able to be present in the moment and really sink into my intuition, like our intuition knows what the other person needs, right? They may not even know what they need, but our intuition will always guide us to at least ask the questions that's going to guide that person to whatever this decision they need to make. And I've really been able to embody that, and it's really helped me a lot, because people will say like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I needed to hear, or oh my gosh, this, that's such a good question. And it gets them into thinking, and it gets them into overcoming their own beliefs, because our job as salespeople or as coaches is not necessarily to tell people what to do, but it's to ask the right questions and guide them to discover what's right for them at this very moment and get them connected and motivated and excited to do that very thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm curious, Anastasia, how much of this piece, like the spirituality to sales combination, do you currently have inside of your coaching program?
Yeah, it's a big piece. It's a big piece. Sales, of course, is just one part of business, because there's so much that goes into it. I think as business owners and entrepreneurs, we are ourselves going through a huge transformational journey when we're on our business, right? You're gonna run into every limiting belief that you've ever held deep inside that you weren't even aware of. You're gonna be running into fears. You're gonna run into self-doubt. You're gonna face problems and challenges with relationships, right? When we think about relationships, it's not just our intimate relationships, but it's how do we relate to everybody, including our clients, including our business partners. So there's a huge personal development component to business. And that's something that I bring in through the shamanic healing that I do, as well as astrology. So I tie in a lot of astrology into
Yeah.
the self-discovery. And that's something that's really helped me do more discovery on myself. And of course, everything in our business is just a projection of us, right? We
Mhm.
are the brand that we're putting out there. So there's a huge spiritual aspect to that. And then when we start a business, or if you already have a business and you're scaling it, also understanding that your business, and this is my personal belief, but your business has a soul, right? Your business has a spirit. Your business has a mission to get out there and serve the people and make the impact that it's meant to make. And so we're kind of balancing between our own journey, but also the journey of supporting our business and not standing in its way, right? Not blocking it from blossoming into its full potential, and helping it to get out there and make the impact that it's supposed to make. And, in sales, when you look at marketing and sales, it's all a tool. It's just
Yeah.
a tool to be able to do that, to be able to self-actualize. And of course, like I said, right, everything in our external reality is just a projection of our internal reality. So the more aligned with our purpose that we can get inside of ourselves, the more that's going to radiate in the world.
Yeah, I love that. And at the end of the day, that's what the spiritual practices are all about, right? Even like we mentioned, doing the dishes, right? It's about finding that true piece of yourself, because if you find who you are at your core, then everything else is aligned. And I'm really gonna butcher this phrase. It's like one a rising tide lifts all boats. I think is that what it is? Did I get that right? Okay, perfect. Because if you don't know who you are, you can't pour into anyone else or anything else properly, right? And I focus primarily on coaching women who feel like they're missing that piece, right? And maybe they don't know that that's what it is, but it's that connectivity piece of knowing who you are at your core. And so I know we're kind of short on time, but I would love for you to kind of dig into, because I think this touches perfectly on it, and you just mentioned it. It's just the shamanic and the astrology work that you do that would help women to connect to themselves. Can you share a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So shamanic work it's spiritual work, right? It's doing soul work. And it's not always conscious. It's not like NLP, right? It's not necessarily things that we may be conscious of. But I personally believe in past lives that we reincarnate, right? You don't have to believe that. You can just look at it through the lens of your past experiences that have shaped you who you are. But you come into this life with a soul, and past life experiences could have attributed to like the memory of that soul that you kind of reincarnated into this life. And in this life, you're really here to learn the lessons, right? To heal a lot of those wounds. With shamanic work, it's really just understanding. And a lot of people think that shamanism is a religion, right? Or it's some kind of a belief system. And it can be, it depends on how you treat it. But it's really a practice that allows you to connect with spirit. Now, it could be the spirit of whatever you believe in, right? Spirit of God, spirit of Jesus, spirit of animals, spirit of nature, spirit of Mother Earth. And I also love the idea of connecting to the spirit of our business and our mission, right? And seeing how does our business want to get out there? And it goes very deep, because when you talk about your soul, right? Your soul in itself is an essence, it's an entity. And there can be times where we may have soul loss that have happened to us through different experiences, through different traumatic experiences. And so shamanic work allows you to be able to bring back some of those soul parts that maybe, like if you've ever felt like something is missing or you're just not 100% yourself, right? It usually happens after, again, we go through a traumatic experience, we go through a medical experience, a surgery. It can even be something as simple as going on vacation and having such an amazing time that we get back to work and how we feel like a part of our essence was left on that vacation.
Yeah.
We just feel 100%. And so that goes both um, along with you, right? Helping you become whole so that you can really fulfill the lessons that you're here to fulfill, but also your business, right? I think we are all accustomed to using phrases like, um, the business spirit is just not the same as it used to be, or we feel like it's like something is draining, right? So being able to fill in all those pieces. And also a lot of it is going to be doing clearing work. I mean, we all know that everywhere we go, we're always getting attachments from other people, other experiences. So being able to clear your soul, clear your essence, and then also fully embody it so that we can get out there and be whole, right? Because that's what we need to be in order to really do the work that we're meant to do. With astrology, it is, oh my gosh, it is so deep.
Yeah.
And it goes way beyond what most people believe, right? Most people, when we hear about astrology, we think of sun signs, right? I'm a Cancer, you're a Pisces, and I'm like this, and we're like that. And I think that's where astrology gets kind of a bad mainstream rep. because of that, but it really goes deep. And so the more deep that you can get into astrology, the more that you start to understand that you are actually a combination of all the energies that exist, right? Of all 12 zodiac signs, of all the planets, because when you really think about it, we are stardust, right?
Yeah.
We are the projections of all of those cosmic energies in very unique form. Every single one of us is very unique. And the more that you start to understand how all of these cosmic energies play out inside of you, where they show up in your life, right? What areas you might experience certain behaviors or certain limitations in your life, it kind of gives you a blueprint of what you need to work on in this lifetime. Right?
Mm.
It gives you a very clear blueprint of these are the lessons that I'm here to learn. And the beautiful thing that it does is it gives you acceptance, right? So rather than saying, oh, this is who I am and there's nothing I could do to change that, it's starting to understand that these are the experiences that I'm here with, and these are the lessons that I need to learn. And this is why I act a certain way in different situations. But ultimately, the goal is to alchemize those. Right. And
Mm.
when we start to understand that about ourselves and other people, it gives us acceptance, right? It helps us
Yeah.
see that, hey, we're all suffering, no matter who you are. You could be the most successful person in the world, make millions of dollars, but somewhere in your life, there's pain and there's suffering. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And so it just brings a lot of humanity to our interactions. And so I know I've talked more about astrology on the personal side, but of course, it also applies to your business because your business it's an extension of you.
Mm. Yeah. And I'm curious, uh, if you can get a blueprint for yourself and for your soul's purpose, can they also achieve through working with you finding a blueprint for their business and their business's soul's purpose?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Again,
That's
your business is an extension of you, right? And if you understand how your relationship is to the world and even your relationship to your business, because your business is an entity. Your business has its own chart, right? Your business has its own purpose to fulfill. Just having that blueprint. And then, of course, there's guidance along the way, because just because you know what to do doesn't mean you know how to do it. And the how is always going to be a process of constant learning and evolution. So, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's amazing. And learn all about how they can apply all the spirituality practices that you offer into their souls and into the soul of their business. How do they get in contact with you?
Well, you can follow me on social media, private message me, and just let me know that you are coming from this podcast, and I'm going to have a special gift waiting for you.
Oh, that's exciting. I didn't know you were going to do that, but I love that. So definitely make sure you mention Rebel Rise on there so that she can hook it up for you. What's your handle?
It's Anastassia Lover. Very simple. Just Anastassia Lover, and we'll drop it. Can we drop it into the comments of this? Of
Yes.
the
Yeah, I'll make sure it's in the show notes. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much
Awesome.
for having me. This was such an amazing time, and we're going to have to do this again and maybe talk
I
about something
know.
a little bit
Yeah.
different. And
Yeah, we'll have to. This time went by way too fast. I just looked at the clock and I was like, okay, we're done. So thank you so much for being here. We'll definitely have you on again. And yeah, just it was a pleasure to have you on.
thank you so much, Vanessa. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Rebel Rise podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode and invite your friends to join us next week. This is your time. Now get out there and rise.